Hi, this is Mark Stewart. Welcome to From Concept to Reality. What is concept? Theory. What is reality? Application. I'd like to welcome my special guest and good friend, Mr. Dwight D. Woods. The D stands for the Master of Destruction, or Dr. Doom. But we all know him and love him as the JKD Rebel. And welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, man. Pleasure to be on with you.
If you recall, actually, the name of this podcast initially was the Tao of Sattahip, which is the city that I live in here in Thailand. And you were the first podcast interview / dialogue that I ever did. It was in May of 2018. I was in Melbourne, Australia.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
I did it from my friend's video. I did it from his living room. And I was super nervous at the time. And I think I've gone a little bit further since then, thanks to you, actually. And thanks to Ahipal as well, and Dean. You know, I kind of watched your style and the things that you've been doing, and it's really beneficial to me. So yeah, you were actually the first one on here, but Mahi came up with the idea. He goes, well, no one really knows what the hell the Tao of Sattahip is. And I said, yeah, well, whatever. You know, I didn't really care. Mm-hmm. And so he gave me the idea from concept to reality, and so I went with that. And so the second episode in the new name show, but you were the first one, and then Mahi was the first one of the new name. So there we go. We got that.
Yeah. Well, you know, he's real good at stuff like that. I think he's extremely dialed in, much more so than I could ever be. You know, I would have to ask somebody like him as well for tips on what's a better name for something. You know, like, I don't know. I mean, we're going into 4 years, but I don't know if the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast and the Jeet Kune Do dialogues are necessarily the best names for my podcast, but I think I'm stuck with them. Right?
Well, I think they're popular, so I would stick with it for sure.
Yeah.
In my case, I'm super creative, but I'm over philosophical, so most of the time people have no idea what I'm talking about, you know, so.
Yeah, well, I suffer from that a little bit from time to time too. Sometimes the references that I will make on the spot make perfect sense to me, but they make perfect sense to me because they are relative to something that may have just gone on in my mind.
Yeah.
So it comes out of my mouth without me realizing, well, nobody else is in your head, Dwight. So, you know, it might sound cool to you. It might make sense to you, but everybody else is going to be left wondering. And that can be a problem sometimes. It depends on how much you care to be understood, right?
Well, yeah, that's another thing, because I find also there's a handful of us like yourself and me and a few others that the people, they know our mindset enough to where they know exactly what we're talking about. I mean, very close, 99% of what we're trying to say, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's an ongoing process, you know. It's like Jeet Kune Do itself. You never get there, right? I'm sure if we ask some of the world's top podcasters, you know, like, can you relax and just dial in your show, you know, not prepare, not give a damn about the quality of the show, because it's also automatic now, it's all going to work. I think we'll discover none of the top people do that.
Yeah, correct.
You know, they treat everything like if it's early on, like if it's the first or second episode or what have you. And I think that's important. And that's very, very related to martial art, whether you're a student or an instructor, or, as somebody was saying, I think on Facebook the other day, Bruce Lee referring to himself as a master student or something. It's all about staying fresh, right? In your own mind. You're the one that told that I first heard the thing, don't be so open-minded that your brains fall out. And then I think it was my friend G. Anthony Joseph that said about having an active mind versus an open mind.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
a fresh mind.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it, like you said, it's all philosophical, but it is true, as trite as it might sound. Every day we wake up is a brand new day. It's not, it's its own entity. And so at the end of that day, when your head hits the pillow, you might have reinvented yourself within that span of 16 hours that you were awake or what have you. That's how powerful any single day in our lives can be. The opportunity to reinvent yourself if that's what's necessary on that particular day. It's about doing what's necessary.
Yeah, and it comes from sound fundamentals. It comes from not allowing the past and the future to get in the way of the present, which is not always easy.
No, not at all. Not at all. But Mark, I don't know about you, but I'm becoming more and more convinced. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if you share a similar belief. It is all about the balance of the two, the complementary halves of the whole. I think everything ultimately boils down to that. Everything.
Indeed.
Right?
And that's the theme of this show.
Right. And so for me, I daily I become more and more convinced that Bruce Lee was the shit. I mean, I've always been convinced of it, but I become more and more convinced that Bruce Lee was the shit, in spite of not having lived past age 32. I think that he saw truth and was able to start injecting it into what he was doing, what he was saying, what he was teaching, what he was thinking, what he was portraying on the big screen. Theatricality aside, but I think the more that I delve into what he wrote, not what he copied necessarily from other sources, as James Bishop has been astute enough to inform us, but stuff that is his own words. To me, it's the yin yang of it.
Well, he was definitely genius. He was definitely genius material and way ahead of time.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he passed so young. But shooting stars. I mean, they're all around us. And those tend to be the ones that we always remember.
Yeah. I mean, I was recently asked where do I think Jeet Kune Do is going to go, from here on in. And I said, it's not going anywhere. Jeet Kune Do cannot go anywhere because Jeet Kune Do is on its own power. Jeet Kune Do can't do anything. It's us. We're the ones who have to animate it. It's like you'll get on different parts of the internet, you'll get a question, well, which art is the best? It's like, well, there is no art that's the best. It all depends. In certain situations, this thing can happen, that thing can happen. So really, it's never the art, it's always the artist. And so Jeet Kune Do, in and of itself, is not going anywhere. It's the people in Jeet Kune Do. What are we going to do? Where are we going to take it? That's what's important. That's what matters, I think.
Yes, indeed. Okay, let me start with this before we get into the actual thing about from theory to application, because I'm really interested, in how you accomplish that as a practitioner and as a teacher, in regard to fighting, training for fighting and how it applies to other areas of your life. But I'd like to start out with something that comes from Bruce Lee. all of us have described it in such a way as Jeet Kune Do being the art, philosophy, and science of Bruce Lee. And I'd like you to give me your definition of art, science, and philosophy as it applies to your understanding of Jeet Kune Do.
Oh God. Well,
Yeah,
you know,
don't have much, but
I'm a simple-minded guy. So you know, art to me is somewhat how it looks, right? Or not it, how people look when they do what they do. You know, that's part of art. I think on my other computer, I do have a thing called the definition of art. I wrote it down, or I got it from somebody somewhere, and it was pretty decent. So I'm sure given time, you know, like I should have asked you to send me that question in advance, and then I could have given a much more sophisticated answer as to what art is. But off the top of my head, art is people doing stuff, people putting stuff out there, you know. So I mean, both like what I guess we would all consider to be like the most common definition of art, or the most common application of art, right? People drawing stuff or painting stuff or whatever. Well, when we move, we are also trying to communicate in the same way that if a guy, like a guy who takes these pictures behind me, Adrian, what's his name, that took many of these pictures of Bob Marley, right? He was trying to convey certain things about Bob, about the situation, the immediate situation involved in the photograph and what have you. So it's not at all just, you know, pointing a camera and snapping a picture. There's a lot that goes into it. So it's the same thing for us as martial artists, right? There's a lot that goes into it, not that people can see, right? So when we move, when we talk and move, when we teach and move, we're trying to convey certain ideas, certain messages, and what have you. So that's the best I can come up with as a definition of art
we can
on short
revisit.
notice.
Yeah, we can revisit this topic because I want to have you on the other podcast called The Ronin's Notebook, and maybe
Okay.
well, probably next year or very late this year, and we'll
Okay.
chat a little.
Yeah. Well,
about.
as long as you let me know in advance, I can do my best to sound smarter. All
Yeah,
right?
well, we said jam session, so whatever.
All right.
Okay, so, all right, next one, philosophy and science.
So I think philosophy is a lot of the theorizing about stuff, or a lot of the theorizing that goes into stuff, or a lot of the thinking behind, a lot of the thinking that goes into stuff, right? And then all of that becomes the material for discussion and or debate. I think it's the philosophical tenets. I think it's the extrapolation of aspects of the art into other areas. I think it's the philosophy that can guide you in that way. You know, so if you think, for example, Chinese Kung Fu, the philosophical art of self-defense, right? Okay, so what it's built in, it's right there in that title, which I think was it. Well, not I think. I mean, it was written before the term Jeet Kune Do was coined, a few years before the term Jeet Kune Do was coined. And what I meant by I think that's what makes Jeet Kune Do a standout. Other martial art methods can inject, they can bring philosophy into their art. I think that Jeet Kune Do, it's the only thing I know about that the philosophy was built in. The philosophy evolved as did the physical art evolve, because the physical art itself was guided by philosophical tenets.
No doubt, no doubt. In
Okay.
fact, you know, that's my favorite book that Bruce Lee ever penned, at bar none.
Mhm.
And clearly, what he's talking about in that book is he clearly defined yin yang and the interplay between the opposites.
Yeah.
And he's interestingly enough, that is Tai Chi. That's Tai Chi. That's it's not Wing Chun. I mean, it's in Wing Chun,
Mhm.
but is the resource for it, the Tao Te Ching and the I Ching and Taoism. The symbol is actually called Tai Chi, the supreme ultimate fist. And
Right.
so basically, I think he never let go of that. That was essentially him.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So yeah. So that goes somewhat back to what we were talking about right at the beginning. Genius material, as you put it, definitely. Right. And I think that we can spend. I mean, I intend to spend the rest of my life delving more and more deeply into this, because and I'll share with you why. It was part of a discussion that we had over the weekend, because you know I was in Central Florida teaching a workshop this weekend.
Yep.
And this was part of the discussion. If I'm in a room with 800 people and I'm speaking to them from the stage, I can ask them, raise your hand, how many people here have ever heard of Bruce Lee? And I wouldn't be surprised if 800 hands go up. But then if I say, okay, raise your hand if you've heard of his martial art, Jeet Kune Do, it's going to be a significant lesser number.
Yeah.
That pisses me off. I don't think it should be that way.
Yeah, we have to play catch up to that. We have to fix that problem.
Yeah, I don't think it should be that way. So I'm pretty much dedicated for the rest of my life to cracking the code that will allow us to bring the art to a level of prominence, a level of preeminence, which the founder enjoys 50 years after he has passed away.
Yes, indeed.
You know?
Yeah, agreed.
In fact, wait. The thing you sent me a couple hours ago by Philip, is it Philip? You sent me a thing. I started to read it. I didn't get through to all of it. But did it say in there, Patrick Strong, I'm sorry, right? The thing you sent me by Patrick Strong, did it say in there that somebody's coming out with a new book on Bruce Lee?
Well, that was that.
Or is that old?
Yeah, that article was from 2013, and it
Oh,
as
okay.
as I recall, the book was written and released shortly thereafter. It's a European publisher, and I think it's the owner of an Italian that magazine called Bruce Lee magazine in Europe somewhere. I don't recall if it was Italy or Spain or something. I don't recall.
Oh, what, Bruce Lee Mania or something?
Yeah, that's
That
possibly the one.
magazine? Okay, okay, all right. Okay, but see, I wouldn't be surprised if there was going to be a new book on Bruce Lee. I mean, we're overdue. When was the last one? Um, Bruce Lee A Life, I think that was the last one. That's been a few years, so we're kind of overdue. It's time for another one, right?
Certainly. And
Yeah.
I, by the way, I won't stick here on this point, but I'm looking forward to the book that you're working on as well, on how Jeet Kune Do may be applied in other areas of your life.
When did I say I was working on that?
Maybe I dreamed that. See, sometimes I dream shit and I'm convinced that it's real. I thought your work said you're writing a book, or maybe it's about philosophy in general. The martial arts philosophy is how to apply it to life. Didn't you say something like that?
I know I have probably, this is actually, it's not something that I talk about that often, but I may have penned an article that I never released,
Oh,
which was about Jeet Kune and the art of interpersonal relationship.
yeah, that's it. That's the one. That's the
Okay.
one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, who knows? Who knows? Maybe I might be able to turn it into an ebook or something.
You should, man. You should.
Yeah. Yeah. All
Okay.
right. Okay.
Fun.
I shall make a note.
Okay. Science.
Science is experimenting, finding out what works, testing your own hypotheses, to see if you were right, if you were wrong. What do you need to change? Do you not need to change anything? Science is just the working of it. Science is as it was said to us, it might have been Ajahn Chai or it might have been Sifudan, but on seminar, it's like, okay, so you're at the seminar, so you're going to get this material. So you got to take this material and you put it in your pocket to take it home. When you get home, you got to take it from this pocket and put it into this pocket. And you got to keep switching it, from the different pants that you're wearing and the different pockets and what have you. In other words, the material, you must work with it, right? Because I don't know, it seems to me that there is a percentage of people who believe that the material which is presented at the seminar is the curriculum. You see?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure where they got that idea from, because old schoolers like you and me, we never had that idea. We always understood this material, I am meant to take it home and play with it, so to speak, right? My students, my school is my sandbox. This is where I go play to see what works for us. That to me is the science. Now I know there are people who will say, well, Bruce Lee was the scientist. Bruce Lee is the one who studied kinesiology or studied biomechanics and whatever, in order to learn how to the best way to deliver a sidekick or whatever. So he's done all the work. So implying that someone like me, I don't need to do the work. I don't need to invent anything because Bruce Lee already did all the work. So all I have to do is to follow his instructions.
Yeah, I think that's a personality trait. Someone that's attracted to that particular viewpoint of science, which I think is correct, but it's only partial.
Well,
But it's personality trait. That's the way they approach things.
but which philosopher or scientist who was a student of a philosopher or scientist before him just accepted everything wholesale and did nothing to put his virtual stamp on it? I don't think, right. I don't think that's how philosophy or science works. So where in heaven's name, in fact, Bruce Lee's own words were what? I encourage those who like Jeet Kune to join me and work on developing it. I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember the exact phrase, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's not a well-known phrase of his because it didn't make it into the final version of Liberate Yourself from Classical Karate, but it's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
it exists.
I'm aware of it. It never left my brain.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on, my brother.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's go to the idea of Mr. Dwight D. Woods, the master of disaster. And what's your approach as a practitioner and coach, teacher in regard to going from theory to application, the process that you use, maybe who inspired you on that, the type of method you use, and so on and so forth.
Well, okay, so let me begin at the end. The
All right.
ultimate, right? The ultimate is to be able to say to somebody, all right, go. And you
Yeah.
deal with it. That's the
Yep.
ultimate.
Yep.
Okay. So if we follow the classic advice of Michael, whoever, E. Myth Gerber, right? Stephen Gerber. I don't remember the names of these people anymore because I so much stuff that goes on in here now. I can't keep it all straight. But begin with the end in mind. There is Super Dog. Right. Is that what was it? Yoga doing yogurt doing.
Here's Wolfie.
Ah, wow.
Yeah, that was Weenie. Yeah, that was the dog doing yoga. Yeah.
Yeah, doing yogurt. Yeah. Right. So okay, so that's where we know we want to get to. Okay, well, you're not going to be able to literally start there, even though part of the process is understanding that's where we're headed. So for me, a guiding principle is Bruce Lee's stages of a technique or stages of synchronization. Synchronization with self. I translate that in my methodology. That means shadow boxing. That means becoming. Now, watch how it relates to life. Synchronization with self means becoming comfortable in your own skin, becoming comfortable with who you are as a human being, right? Martially, it's shadow boxing. I tell the story in my early days with Ajahn Chai, right? I'm like, so what's good for developing speed? Shadow boxing. What's good for developing proper technique? Shadow boxing. What's good for developing this? Shadow boxing. Okay, all right. So I got the message. So shadow boxing is very, very important. Actually, you know, I thought of this the other day. What do you make of this? When you see most people shadow box, my observation is that they shadow box mostly the offensive. You very seldom see people shadow box the defensive or the counter offensive.
Yeah, man. And it all has to be put together. Isolate it, then integrate it. Boom.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the beginning. Stage 2 of synchronization. Synchronization in Bruce Lee's writing with an opponent. Well, if I'm running a martial art group, it's not with an opponent, it's with a training partner. Now, the way that training partner becomes an opponent has to do then with, to use the vernacular, pressure testing, right? It's the levels or the degrees of cooperativeness of the training partner. And now that second stage can be synonymous with the other Bruce Lee saying about stages, you know, the primitive stage and the mechanical stage. So that stage of synchronization with the training partner can be equated to the mechanical stage where people can get caught up in a lot of stuff. So again, it's important as JKD instructors, as JKD practitioners, that we make sure that when we are in that second stage of synchronization with training partner, that we do not slip into that mechanical stage. Because remember, Bruce Lee said, you know, it's where they're not only physically bound, but they can become intellectually bound as well. And I hate to admit it, but there are some people in Jeet Kune Do who are intellectually bound. They are. They are, right? Because for whatever reason, I guess there are certain things in Bruce Lee's directives that just don't filter into their brains. And so they just get this idea that, no, this is it. This is the way. And
Well, and it may and or sell better.
I guess.
I see that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there are that many people out there that if you say to them, you have a choice. In training with me in Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, you have a choice. I can train you to loyally follow me and accept everything that I say because you trust me and because you know I am legitimately descended from Bruce Lee through Dan and Asano. So we can do it that way. Or I can teach you, those conditions still apply. You still trust me. You're still loyal to me. You still trust in my ability and my lineage. But I'm going to teach you to think for yourself.
Yeah.
How many people are going to opt, right, for the first condition? Nobody. Because everybody, whether their level of recognition is all the way up here, that it has gotten all the way. I guess a guy like you would relate it to which chakra their level of recognition about what they desire. How far up the chain has it come? Right. Okay. I'm not so esoteric. I live in Miami, man. Right. So but it equates to the whole thing about people who know that they don't know and what you can do with them versus the ones who are at the point where they don't know that they don't know. But see, this is the thing. I don't think that anyone who does not know that he does not know walks into a martial arts school.
Yeah.
I don't think that category a person does. Not at all. Not at all. Right? So once we are in contact with somebody, the process begins.
Yeah.
And now, as the leader of the group, as the instructor, as the owner of the school or whatever, it's our job to have developed processes and systems and procedures and what have you to take people along that path. Right? Now,
yeah.
Why are we talking about this? What was the question?
Well, we're
methodology, right?
I just want to remind you too that we've discussed it before, so I'd like you to kind of expound on the idea of integration. Isolation and integration of the things that we're talking about, the process.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. So then stage 3 of synchronization, application under fighting conditions. Okay. Now, under fighting conditions does not mean mayhem, right? Because we're still dealing with people who, for the most part, if you're running a training group, if you're running a school, you're dealing mostly with people. In fact, let's say it's not that. Let's say you are a coach of fighters, right? So you don't run a commercial establishment. You cannot have mayhem in your stage 3 of synchronization because your fighters are going to get bashed up in training and then they're not going to be able to go compete. So application under fighting conditions does not mean, it's not a synonym for mayhem. It still has to be controlled. So that leads to one of my Miami Jeet Kune Do-isms or Dwightisms. All sparring must be controlled. Now, there are different aspects of what is controlled, right? So like, I think you were there in the discussion when I first talked about the term free arranged.
Yeah.
Right. I think it was me, you, Dean, and Grody, I think, right? So the application, look, application under fighting conditions. Fighting condition is basically this. You don't know what's going to happen. Anything short of that is some kind of prearrangement. Even if it is, let's take isolated sparring. You're going to use legs, I'm going to use arms. That's a prearranged thing. Even if I don't know exactly what it is that you're going to do, right? But see, if I've taken a student past synchronization stage 1, self, past or through synchronization stage 2 with a training partner, and now we are at stage 3, application under fighting condition, I still can't release them into the wild. You see, because have you ever heard this? I heard it from Inosano one time. So there's beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Let's keep it simple. 3 levels, right?
Yeah.
Then there's beginner, intermediate beginner, and advanced beginner. And then it starts over. So when you get to synchronization stage 3, application under fighting conditions, there's the beginner level of that. Then there's the intermediate level of that. Then there's the advanced level of that. Then there's the very advanced level of that. The very advanced level of that is the closest thing there will be to reality. Because remember, as long as we are in a training situation, all we can do is hope to approximate the reality of the situation. It cannot be real, because if I go up against you, I'm going up against somebody I know, somebody that I care for to a certain extent. Yes, we are involved, right, in fighting each other, but we're not real enemies.
Yeah, you're concerned about each other.
Yeah, so it is still make believe to a certain extent, you know.
Yeah, you have to survive.
Right, because I was alluding to this earlier. Most of the people that we train are people who have to go to work the next day. And that's why no matter what level they're training at, they have to be preserved, because what's the point of coming to your martial arts school to get the snot kicked out of you so badly that you can't go to work the next day? That's not I mean, maybe to some people that's it. Wow, but yeah, man, but that's hardcore. I don't know.
Well, you know, Dwight, when I probably realized it earlier on with training with Guru Ted, because he was a genius at the way he presented things.
Yeah.
And but when I went to Thailand for the first time in 1994, I trained at the Sidyatong camp in Pattaya, a really famous Muay Thai gym.
Mm-hmm.
And their approach was super simple. But what I learned was that they never sparred hard.
Right.
And the reason why is because they fought once a week.
Yes.
Or let's say once a month on average. Yes. But some of them, the amateurs would actually fight once a week. Because why? Because they're their family. They're poor.
Right.
Okay, but the point really that I'm trying to make is they had to survive their training so that they had something left to fight, number one. And number two, they're all friends.
Yeah.
They're Buddhists, for heaven's sake, you know, and that's the way they are, you know, smile, Coke and a smile.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, it is somewhat that when I learned that was part of the training protocol in Muay Thai gyms, I thought makes perfect sense to apply, because remember in Sifu Dan's book, I think that they were trying to describe the situation delicately, right? no, not in Seafood Dan's book, in Chris Kent and Tim Tackett's book, where they say that in 1970, Dan Inosanto added the sophistication of the Filipino panantukan, right?
Yep.
So that people wouldn't bash each other's brains out every training session. Because I think that Bruce Lee might not have gotten to the point and cultivated where the hard sparring was not the epitome. You know, I think he didn't have the time to cultivate something less than hard sparring.
Yeah, I think they jumped from fully compliant to fully non-compliant back in the day.
Yeah, probably, right? So yeah, so when I heard that about the Thai boxers, I thought, okay, well, in the same way that we in what I call Junfan kickboxing, we try to inject the Thai boxing fervor, the Thai boxing mentality, the idea of everything being 100% in Muay Thai. You know, as Rick Fay says, where they pretty much stand in range of each other and throw bombs, right? You know, now you would know this better than would I. Perhaps new school taekwondo, perhaps new school Muay Thai is not so much that stand in range and throw bombs now. Maybe it's more you know, maybe there's more probing and setting up and what have you, as opposed to the old days where it's like, well, I hit you and we just keep exchanging and whoever survives is the one that comes out on top, right? I imagine that it might have changed a little. I mean, it has, right?
Has changed a lot.
Okay.
Total evolution. Total evolution.
Interesting.
Or it's called Muay femur, as like femur, but that's not what it means. It just means beautiful. It's beautiful Muay Thai, and basically they're expressing 3 ranges. They're expressing angulation and evasion and fakes and feints, and totally different.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Right. There's Muay femur, Muay cow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I read an article on that. Fascinating article on there's like 4 styles, right?
Right.
Yeah. I remember seeing that and I thought, wow.
Yeah, because one of them is clinching, palm. One is clinching, one is elbow, one is knee, one is firing those demon leg kicks until they drop their hands and knocking them out with a kick.
Right.
The other one is Muay femur, but you know, there's more to it than that. Not to drift off too far, but the one where they stand in range to hit each other and throw bombs is based mainly on the fact that people gamble to see that. Yeah. And so that's the truth.
Yeah. But so interesting, because then there is, I guess, in the back of the minds of the fighters, the idea that they're there to entertain somewhat the crowd.
Yeah, and well, you know, on the dark side, and or taking a dive, and or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, that's why I have expressed to people that for me, Muay Thai is a Jeet Kune Do training method. I'm in Muay Thai because of some of the things that it can deliver to my Jeet Kune Do. You see, as even though I'm smart enough to know that not everybody will look at it that way, and so when I had the big school, we had a separate Muay Thai program, right? And I'm smart enough to know that I'm smart enough to know not everybody is going to see it that way, but that's what it was for me.
Yeah.
Right. You know, what I could extract from it. not necessarily divorcing it completely from JKD. Same thing with Kali, you know. I hate that you sometimes have to refer to things as JKD Kali or Kali JKD or whatever. I wish I could just say Kali and people would understand I'm talking again about what? A Jeet Kune Do training method, not a separate art. But that's going to take some work to get to the point where people will understand, because I've said it so much, it's been repeated so often that anybody who hears me say it, they go, oh, I know what he's talking about. He's just talking about principles and concepts.
Yep.
You know, borrowing one from the other. You know, that's why I say, I forget now. I know that I adopted it from the late Salem Ashley, Jeet Kune Do's associated disciplines, but I forget. I think I was told who Salem got it from, but now I can't recall. Again, too much stuff going on up here to retain it all.
How in the hell can you survive being as busy as you are, dude? What's up?
It's because I know that I have not done everything that I am supposed to do. I have not done everything that I'm capable of doing. Right. And so for the time I have left,
yeah,
I want people, I'll say this publicly. I want people to go, well, no wonder, look at how much he's doing. You know what I mean? Right.
Yeah.
That's what I want. Right. And so, you guys are gonna be like, good God, who lit a fire under his butt? There's this and there's this and there's that. Well, it's because a lot of it should have been a long time ago. Again, yesterday I was asked yesterday in an interview if there was anything. They didn't say if there was anything I regretted, but I expressed it that way. That one of the things that I regret, and then I said that's a misstatement. I don't regret using my Eastern Airlines travel privileges to follow Dan Inosanto around the USA. I don't regret that, right? But I do regret that I didn't use my airline privileges to have traveled to every continent before I died. I should have done that.
Yeah.
You see? Okay. But that's an example of things that I know that I should have done in the past. And so when it comes to Jeet Kune Do, like I told you, the quest now is to get the level of recognition between the name of the founder, the image of the founder, and the name of the art. Should never have happened that there was a de-emphasizing of one over the other. And I'm not pointing fingers, but it was deliberate. But it wasn't deliberate in an intentionally harmful way. I think the old timers, bless their hearts, thought they were doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Because none of them knew that after July 20th, 1973, this thing, see, the concept with which they were dealing at the time was a concept of what? We hang out in small groups in the backyard and we get real good at a few simple, what Tim Tackett and Bob Bremer may have called core techniques. We get real good at that. We get real good at what Greg Nelson would say, master a few and jack everybody, right?
Yep.
The reality of it, however, after July 20th, 1973, was not that at all. The demand for Bruce Lee's thing grew way, way, way beyond 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 guys, right, in a gym that you built in your backyard. And they weren't prepared for it. They didn't expect it, and I don't think I don't. But I'm not blaming them. I'm not pointing fingers, because if something like that had happened to me, right? So in other words, if I get a phone call tomorrow from some radio podcasting conglomerate investor, whatever, and they go, "Hey, Dwight, we know you've been around for 4 years or whatever. We want to, start backing you and whatever." I don't know what to say to them. I don't know what it is that I am supposed to have put in place to whatever. Twice a week, I fire up my laptop. I turn the microphone and the thing on. I put a couple lights out, and I go.
Yeah, why would you want to do it any other way, to be honest with you? Hey,
Right?
and the example of what you just talked about is a great example of the law of unintended consequences.
Well, that's a fancy term with which I'm familiar, but don't ask me to tell you what it means.
Well, I'll tell you what it means. This means you had the intention of doing a certain thing, and then shit didn't work out that way. It was the complete opposite that happened.
Yeah, well, that's part of going with the flow.
Yeah.
That's part of I guess the law of non-resistance or whatever, right? I mean, I mentioned this yesterday. A friend of mine said to me, "Well, everything that happens to you, everywhere that you find yourself, every situation in which you find yourself, probably what was supposed to happen, because if it wasn't supposed to happen, why is it happening?"
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah,
now,
well, now you're getting philosophical again. I totally relate to what you're saying.
right? Okay, but now here's your responsibility. Now you have to be honest enough to say, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. Am I enjoying that which is happening to me?" If you are, you're good. If you're not, then you gotta ask yourself, okay, well, what are the habits? What are the behaviors? What are the practices? What are the thought patterns? You have to identify how it is that you ended up there, because part of that is what? Taking full responsibility. Right? Okay. Right. So now that takes us philosophically back to Bruce Lee. Is Bruce Lee a good example of a human being who accepted full responsibility for his own situations? Or did he blame other people? You see?
Well, I'm not sure we know, but as far as I know, he did not blame other people.
As far as I know, also. And so when I lecture about Bruce Lee, I try to lecture based on what we do know, what we can see for ourselves.
Yeah.
So when Bruce Lee says, "Hey, if I was the money guy, right, I don't know," right? So essentially what he's saying is, if I'm the money guy in Hong Kong, I don't know that I would bank on putting a white guy, right, into my series.
Right,
okay?
right.
What is that? So so you could have a concept for a TV show, a movie, or whatever, and you might like the idea of this and this, but what is the reality? The reality,
that's looked at corporate society we've lived in forever.
Yeah. You see, but Bruce Lee was smart enough to accept what he couldn't change, and then change what he could. So even though he said that to Pierre Berton, when they got on the set of Big Boss, again, to the best of my knowledge, one of the first disputes was over the fighting style. And he was like, I'm not going to fight that way.
Yeah.
Because everybody else is fighting that way.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, if you had me play a role in a movie where I had to channel that Bruce Lee attitude, I'd be like, I'm not doing that. Everybody else is doing that. I'm not doing it. You know why? I'm Dwight Woods. Right?
Yeah.
That's how I.
Rest is history. Look what that got, Bruce. And Dwight, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to close shop and leave it at that. But in closing, I would like to say that thank you very much for the things that you're doing. And again, you've remained open-minded enough to allow a diverse amount of people on your show, and it's been highly interesting. And
I want to get better at doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you are, and I know you've been under pressure not to have some people on, and that's understandable as well. I mean, look, you know, for various reasons, but I would like to say congratulations on being so open-minded that all your brains did not fall out.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it very much.
Okay, brother.
All right, man. You have a good one. Take care.
Thanks so much.